Part 1. The wind howled across the Antarctic Research Station as Dr. Sarah Chen peered through the blizzard at her instruments. Something was wrong. The electromagnetic readings had been going haywire for the past hour, showing patterns she'd never seen before in her 15 years of studying the Earth's magnetic field. Dr. Chen. The voice of her research assistant James crackled through the radio. "You need to see this." Sarah grabbed her extreme weather gear and rushed outside. Through the swirling snow, she saw it, a streak of purple fire cutting across the sky, trailing debris and what looked like crystalline fragments. The object, whatever it was, struck the ice sheet just 3 kilometers from the station. "Get the emergency response team," she ordered, already heading for the garage where they kept their specialized vehicles. "And contact McMurdo Station. Tell them we have a potential meteorite impact event." But Sarah knew this was no meteorite. The EM readings, the purple fire, the crystalline debris, nothing about this followed normal patterns. 20 minutes later, she led a team of 4 researchers across the ice in their tracked vehicle. The storm was intensifying, but the impact site was impossible to miss. A deep crater had melted into the ice, steam still rising from its edges. And in the center, "My God," James whispered beside her. A ship lay broken in the crater, its hull made of some iridescent material that shifted colors even in the dim Antarctic light. But what truly froze them in place was the figure that emerged from the wreckage, tall, insectoid, with 4 arms, and what appeared to be bioluminescent patches across its exoskeleton. The alien took 3 stumbling steps toward them before collapsing. Without hesitation, Sarah ran forward. Her medical training kicked in as she checked the creature for signs of life. Its exoskeleton was cracked in several places, leaking a phosphorescent fluid. "It's dying," she realized. "We need to get it back to the station." "Dr. Chen, we have no idea what that thing is," James protested. "It's a refugee," Sarah cut him off. "Look at the damage to the ship. Those aren't impact marks." Something was shooting at it. The alien's eyes flickered, and it reached out with one of its arms, touching Sarah's faceplate. A surge of images and emotions flooded her mind. Terror, desperation, and above all, a warning. She saw vast swarms of living darkness consuming entire worlds, unstoppable and endless. She saw advanced civilizations falling one by one, their weapons useless. And she saw Earth, marked as the last hope for a dying galaxy. "Help us," the alien managed to transmit directly into her thoughts before losing consciousness. "You are our only hope. The void swarm comes." Sarah keyed her radio. "Base, this is Dr. Chen. Contact every major government immediately. First contact protocols are in effect." She looked up at the storm-racked sky, knowing that somewhere up there, something terrible was coming. "And tell them we're going to need every weapon we've got." In the days that followed, as the alien recovered in a hastily constructed medical facility, humanity learned the truth. The galaxy was vast and filled with intelligent life, but most habitable worlds were paradise planets with stable conditions. Earth, with its extreme temperatures, natural disasters, and evolutionary arms races, was considered a death world, a place no sane species would choose to live. But now, as a horror beyond imagination threatened to consume all life, the galaxy needed Deathworlders. They needed humans, with their ability to survive and adapt to the most hostile conditions. They needed a species that had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day, a species that looked at impossible odds and found a way to win anyway. As Sarah listened to the alien ambassador's story, she felt a fierce pride. Humanity had often wondered if we were alone in the universe, if we were somehow deficient because we hadn't been contacted. Now she understood. We weren't ignored because we were primitive. We were avoided because we were too strong, too resilient, too dangerous. And now, those very qualities might be the only thing standing between the galaxy and total annihilation. The grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly had never been so quiet. Thousands of representatives from hundreds of civilizations sat in stunned silence as they watched the footage from Earth. Humans in powered armor suits walked through radiation zones that would kill most species instantly. Engineers worked in pressure chambers that would crush any other sentient race. Soldiers trained in environmental conditions ranging from scorching deserts to frozen wastelands. High Chancellor Vextin, their crystalline form shimmering with anxiety, spoke first. These cannot be natural beings. No species could evolve to survive such extremes. Ambassador Corell, the insectoid refugee who had crashed in Antarctica, stepped forward. Their wounds had healed, leaving iridescent scars across their exoskeleton. That is exactly why we need them. The Void Swarm adapts to every weapon we use, every strategy we try. We need beings who understand adaptation at their core. They're barbarians, shouted one representative, their tentacles writhing in distress. Look at their history. They've spent their entire existence fighting each other. Yes, came a calm voice from the entrance. Dr. Sarah Chen walked into the chamber, accompanied by General Maria Santos of Earth's United Defense Force. We fought each other. We fought our environment. We fought every challenge our world threw at us. And we survived. The assembly erupted in murmurs and exclamations. Many representatives physically recoiled from the humans' presence. They had never been this close to Deathworlders before. General Santos stepped forward, her scared face and cybernetic eye marking her as a veteran of Earth's latest conflicts. You call us barbarians, but we've learned from every fight. We've turned our warlike nature into a shield for those who cannot defend themselves. We've transformed our competitive drive into technological innovation. She activated a holographic display, showing Earth's latest defensive technologies. While you were avoiding us, we were preparing. Not because we knew about alien threats, but because that's what humans do. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. The Void Swarm has consumed 32 worlds, Corell announced, silencing the chamber. They adapt to energy weapons within hours. Physical barriers last only days. They learn, they evolve, they consume, just like they did on my homeworld. Tears of luminescent fluid traced down Corell's face. I watched my civilization fall. We were peaceful, advanced, enlightened. And we died because we didn't know how to face an enemy that breaks all the rules. Sarah stepped forward again. But that's all humans have ever done. Break rules, find new ways, survive the impossible. You avoided Earth because you thought we were too dangerous. You're right. We are dangerous. And now, that's exactly what the galaxy needs. She gestured to the display, which now showed the Void Swarm's advance across the galaxy. Your weapons aren't working because you're fighting the last war. You're using tactics designed for civilized combat against an uncivilized enemy. But humans, she smiled grimly. We wrote the book on unconventional warfare. General Santos took over. We've already analyzed the Void Swarm's attack patterns. They're similar to how invasive species behave on Earth. We've developed countermeasures based on our experience fighting everything from microscopic viruses to continent-spanning wildfires. Impossible, High Chancellor Vextin declared. Your civilization is barely spacefaring. You cannot have solutions that our greatest minds couldn't discover. With respect, Chancellor, Sarah replied. That's exactly why we can see what you can't. You've spent millennia advancing along safe, predictable paths. Humans, we advanced by surviving chaos. We thrive on solving impossible problems. The chamber fell silent again as images of Earth's natural disasters played across the displays. Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. Alongside them, footage showed humans not just surviving these catastrophes, but learning to predict them, contain them, and even harness their power. We don't need your permission to fight, General Santos concluded. The Void Swarm will reach Earth eventually, and we'll face them whether you help us or not. But together we might not just survive. We might win. Ambassador Corell moved to stand beside the humans. I have seen their world. I have watched their children play in conditions that would kill our strongest warriors. They are not what we feared. They are what we need. The only question is, will we let our prejudice doom us all? The Galactic Assembly looked at each other, ancient species that had evolved in paradise worlds, suddenly faced with trusting their fate to creatures they had long dismissed as savages. In the end, they really had no choice. The Void Swarm was coming, and the Deathworlders were their only hope. The command center of the UDF Prometheus hummed with activity as General Santos studied the holographic display. The massive vessel, Earth's first true capital ship, had been retrofitted with technology from a dozen alien species. But its heart, its strategy, was purely human. "Show me the Void Swarm's current position," she ordered. The display shifted, revealing a mass of writhing darkness consuming the edges of what had once been Corell's home system. The swarm moved like a living thing, because that's exactly what it was, a vast collective of spaceborne organisms that consumed everything in their path. Sarah Chen stood beside her, now wearing the uniform of Earth's Sinological Defense Corps. "The simulations are complete," she reported. "The swarm's behavior matches exactly what we predicted. They're not just consuming resources, they're following the path of least resistance, just like any invasive species. Which means they can be herded." Santos nodded. She turned to Corell, who was studying the display with all four hands clasped tightly. "Your people thought of these things as an unstoppable force. We see them as an ecological system that can be manipulated." The alien ambassador's antennae twitched. The Assembly's finest minds said they couldn't be stopped, that their adaptation rate made them invincible. "That's because they tried to stop them completely," Sarah explained. "But on Earth, when we face an invasive species or a natural disaster, we don't try to halt it instantly. We control it, contain it, and guide it to its own destruction." The doors slid open as Commander James Chen, Sarah's former research assistant, now tactical officer, entered with a group of Earth's finest environmental scientists and military strategists. Each wore patches showing their specialties: wildfire management, pandemic response, invasive species control, and more. "Phase 1 is ready," James reported. "The modified terraforming engines have been deployed at these coordinates." Red dots appeared on the display, surrounding the swarm's expected path. "They're ready to create the environmental barriers on your command." Santos nodded. "Show me the kill zone." The display shifted again, revealing a vast empty region of space. Here, the human fleet had worked with alien engineers to construct something unprecedented, a massive trap for a swarm of spaceborne predators. "It's based on how we fight wildfires on Earth," Sarah explained to Corell. "We create fire breaks, zones where the fire can't find fuel. But we also use controlled burns, fighting fire with fire. In this case, we're going to give the swarm exactly what it wants," Santos finished. "A perfect feeding ground. Too perfect to resist." The assembled aliens watched in fascination as the humans explained their plan. It violated every principle of conventional space warfare, but it reflected something the aliens had never truly understood: humanity's deep experience with fighting forces of nature. "The swarm adapts to direct attacks," James explained, "but it's never faced an enemy that uses its own nature against it. We've spent centuries learning how to redirect natural forces. Now we're applying those lessons on a galactic scale." A junior officer rushed in. "General, the swarm has changed course. They're heading toward the bait system." Santos smiled grimly. "Right on schedule. They think they're hunting us. They don't realize we've been hunting them since the beginning." She turned to the assembled team. "This is what humanity does best. We take something that should kill us and turn it into a weapon." Operation Wildfire is now in effect. The next 48 hours were a symphony of coordinated chaos that left the alien observers in awe. Human ships darted through space like irritating insects, drawing segments of the swarm away from the main mass. Modified terraforming engines fired up, creating waves of gravitational disturbance that the swarm instinctively avoided, just like herding locusts. Sarah murmured, watching the swarm flow exactly where they wanted it to go. They're following the path of least resistance straight into our trap. The aliens had expected the humans to build some kind of superweapon. Instead, they had created an elaborate ecological trap, using the swarm's own instincts and behavioral patterns against it. It was simultaneously primitive and sophisticated in a way that only humans could conceive. Energy spike. James called out. The swarm has entered the kill zone. Environmental containment fields are active. Santos keyed the fleet-wide comm. All ships, execute Phase 3. Remember your training. Fight it like a wildfire. The space around the kill zone erupted with activity. Ships moved in precise patterns, creating gravitational waves that trapped segments of the swarm in ever smaller pockets. Terraforming engines fired in sequence, generating environmental conditions that the swarm couldn't adapt to fast enough. They're not just destroying it, Corell realized, watching in amazement. They're breaking it down into manageable pieces, like firefighters creating backburns, Sarah nodded, or like how we isolate infected populations during a pandemic. The principles are the same: divide, contain, eliminate. We've been practicing for this fight our entire history. We just didn't know it. The swarm thrashed and tried to adapt, but for the first time in its existence, like firefighters creating backburns, Sarah nodded, or like how we isolate infected populations during a pandemic. The principles are the same: divide, contain, eliminate. We've been practicing for this fight our entire history. We just didn't know it. The swarm thrashed and tried to adapt, but for the first time in its existence. The bridge of the Prometheus shook as another gravitational wave rippled through space. General Santos gripped her command chair, watching as the massive trap they'd set for the Void Swarm began its final phase. Around her, human and alien crew members worked in perfect synchronization, their previous differences forgotten in the heat of battle. Containment field integrity at 60%, James called out, his hands flying over the control panel. The swarm is attempting to adapt to the environmental changes, but they're splitting apart exactly as predicted. Sarah studied the biological readings flooding her station. The separate segments are showing signs of stress. They'd never been forced to adapt to so many different conditions simultaneously. It's overwhelming their ability to evolve countermeasures. Corell watched in astonishment as the human fleet executed maneuvers that seemed suicidal to conventional military doctrine. Ships dove directly into segments of the swarm, not to attack, but to create precise gravitational disturbances that further fractured the massive entity. Your people fly like madmen, the ambassador observed, their antennae twitching with both fear and admiration. We fly like storm chasers, Sarah corrected, a grim smile on her face. On Earth, we learn to dance with hurricanes, to study tornadoes from within. Space is just another hostile environment to master. The tactical display showed the full scope of Operation Wildfire. The trap wasn't just a single killing ground. It was a cascading series of hostile environments, each designed to force the swarm to adapt in ways that made it vulnerable to the next phase. Like a series of controlled burns directing a wildfire into a dead end. Multiple quantum signatures detected. A sensor operator shouted. The swarm is attempting to breach the containment field through dimensional variance. Santos nodded calmly. Just as expected. Execute Protocol Thunderstorm. Across the battlefield, human ships activated devices that the alien engineers had sworn would never work. Machines designed to artificially recreate the electromagnetic properties of Earth's most violent storms. The swarm, attempting to shift through quantum states, found itself caught in a manufactured supercell of space-time distortions. By the first light, Corell whispered, watching the swarm writhe in the artificial storm. You're not just fighting them. You're changing the fundamental nature of space around them. On Earth, we learned early that you can't always fight nature directly. Sarah explained, monitoring the swarm's deteriorating biological signatures. Sometimes you have to change the environment itself. Make it so hostile that the threat eliminates itself. The plan was working, but the cost was steep. Several human ships had already been lost, their crews sacrificing themselves to maintain crucial portions of the containment field. The aliens watched in awe as human pilots volunteered for missions that seemed certain death, only to emerge victorious through a combination of skill, determination, and what appeared to be sheer impossibility. Swarm mass reduced to 30%, James reported. Primary segments are showing signs of cellular breakdown. They can't maintain cohesion under multiple environmental stresses. Santos keyed the fleet-wide comm. All ships, commence final phase. Remember the Amazon protocol. Sarah's eyes widened. General, the stress on the ships will be exactly like what we trained for in the hurricane simulations. Santos cut her off. Our ships were built on a death world, Doctor. Let's show them what that means. The human fleet moved as one, their ships forming patterns that mimicked the fluid dynamics of Earth's most powerful natural phenomena. They weren't just fighting the swarm, they were becoming a force of nature themselves. The containment field pulsed with energy as dozens of terraforming engines fired simultaneously, creating a cascade of environmental changes that ripped through space like a tsunami. The swarm, already fragmented and struggling to adapt, began to break apart at the molecular level. It's working, Corell exclaimed, their bioluminescent patches glowing with excitement. The swarm, it's actually dying. But Santos and Sarah exchanged knowing looks. This wasn't just about killing the swarm. The real test would come in what followed. Deploy the recovery drones, Santos ordered. I want samples from every segment of the swarm, especially the ones that showed the most adaptive capability. Samples. Corell's antennae went rigid with shock. You want to preserve parts of it? Of course, Sarah replied, already coordinating the drone deployment. On Earth, we learned that understanding our enemies is as important as defeating them. Every invasive species teaches us something new about adaptation and survival. The swarm is no different. As the battle entered its final stages, the aliens began to understand something profound about their human allies. The Deathworlders hadn't just survived their harsh planet. They had learned to understand it, to work with its forces rather than simply fighting against them. And now they were applying those lessons on a galactic scale. The Void Swarm, a threat that had consumed dozens of worlds, was being systematically dismantled by beings who had evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every day. Humanity wasn't just winning the battle, they were transforming the very nature of space warfare itself. 1 month after the Battle of New Eden, the Galactic Assembly gathered again. But this time was different. Where once the human representatives had been viewed with fear and suspicion, now they were welcomed with a mixture of respect, curiosity, and perhaps a hint of lingering unease. The Great Chamber had been modified to accommodate Earth's higher gravity requirements. General Santos and Dr. Chen stood before the assembly, their presence a testament to how much had changed. Behind them, a holographic display showed the aftermath of their victory, the contained remnants of the Void Swarm being studied in specialized human research facilities. High Chancellor Vextin's crystalline form sparkled as they addressed the chamber. We called them Deathworlders. We feared their strength, their resilience, their capacity for violence. But we failed to see something far more important, their wisdom. Sarah stepped forward, her expression serious. The Void Swarm taught us all something valuable. The galaxy isn't divided between peaceful worlds and death worlds. Every planet, every species, faces its own challenges. Humans don't survive because we're stronger. We survive because we learn. The display shifted to show the new defensive systems being implemented across the galaxy. Based on human principles, they treated space itself as an ecosystem to be managed, rather than just a battlefield to be won. The samples we recovered from the swarm are already yielding insights, Sarah continued. Their adaptive capabilities, properly understood and controlled, could help us terraform hostile worlds. protect vulnerable systems, even heal environmental damage. You seek to use the very force that nearly destroyed us. A representative asked, their tentacles waving in alarm. General Santos smiled. On Earth, we learned to use controlled fires to prevent devastating wildfires. We use modified viruses to cure diseases. We learned that understanding our enemies is often more powerful than simply destroying them. Ambassador Corell, now Earth's official representative to the Assembly, stepped up beside them. My people lost everything to the swarm. But watching humans fight it, I understood something profound. They don't just survive their hostile world, they embrace its challenges. Each obstacle becomes a lesson, each threat a potential tool. The chamber murmured as images appeared showing human scientists working alongside alien researchers, sharing their unique perspectives on everything from environmental management to space travel. We propose a new initiative, Santos announced, the Galactic Environmental Defense Force. Not just a military alliance, but a commitment to understanding and managing the natural forces that shape our galaxy. Because the next threat won't be like the Void Swarm, but the principles we use to defeat it will still apply. Sarah took over. Every species in this assembly evolved to survive their own challenges. Humans don't claim to be better. We're just different. We learned our lessons in one of the harshest classrooms imaginable. Now we want to share those lessons and learn from yours in return. The display showed the first graduating class of the new force. Aliens learning Earth survival techniques, while humans studied the unique environmental adaptations of other species. It was a transformation nobody had imagined possible just months ago. The term Deathworlder needs to be retired, Corell declared. Earth isn't a death world. It's a world that taught its children to face any challenge, adapt to any situation, and find opportunity in adversity. Those are lessons the entire galaxy needs. High Chancellor Vextin rose. The Assembly will vote on the formation of the Galactic Environmental Defense Force. But first, they turned to the human representatives. In recognition of humanity's service to the galaxy, Earth is hereby offered full membership in the Galactic Assembly, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. Santos and Sarah exchanged glances. This was what humanity had dreamed of since first looking up at the stars, acceptance into a greater community. But they had earned it not by becoming more like the other species, but by being uniquely human. We accept, Santos replied, with one condition. Earth remains open to any species willing to train there. Yes, it's dangerous by your standards. Yes, it's challenging. But as we've shown, those challenges make us stronger, together. As the assembly erupted in approval, Sarah looked out at the gathered representatives of 1,000 worlds. She remembered that desperate night in Antarctica, when a dying alien brought humanity a warning and a chance. They had done more than save the galaxy. They had changed it forever. And this, she whispered to herself, is just the beginning. In the years that followed, humanity's influence spread throughout the galaxy, not through conquest or dominance, but through teaching and learning. The principles that had helped them survive Earth became the foundation for a new understanding of how to face universal challenges. The galaxy learned that strength comes in many forms, that adaptation is more powerful than raw force, and that sometimes the most dangerous world can produce the wisest teachers. The age of isolation was over. The age of collaboration had begun. And somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, other threats waited. But this time, they would face not just humanity, but a galaxy that had learned to think like Deathworlders while keeping the wisdom of their own worlds. It was a combination that would reshape the very nature of civilization itself.